So let's go through all of this in a little more systematic way. So the first thing is we need to check is all of this learning is going to be, I think people are very naturally associating more calories with more strength. That's what, even we have this in mind to a point until we eat too much. But this is probably harder to learn about micronutrient deficiency because that's not something that is as obvious and you don't necessarily know which foods have what nutrients, etc. And so the first thing we need to establish is that micronutrient deficiency actually matters. And in particular, that we could, the poor, or even the not so poor, could become more productive if they ate, if they got more micronutrient supplementation in their diet. So for that, of course, looking at people who have we could compare the wages of people who have more hemoglobin in their blood and the wages of people who have less hemoglobin in their blood. If we do that, what do you think we will find? Most likely. We look at a data set and we look at the wages of anemic people versus the wages of non-anemic people. Richard?
Of course, the non-anemic people have more strength to do work, so their wages are higher if they're paid by them.
So the non-anemic people, when we do this comparison, will make more money. That's sure probably in every data set we're going to find that. But once we find that, can we for sure say it's the effect of being anemic?
Not necessarily. It could be a confounding factor. You could be anemic because you don't make good wages enough to have a proper diet, or you could not have good wages because you're anemic.
Right, so the two things. So first, there could be a reverse causality at play, which is you could be anemic because you don't earn enough to buy spinach. That's one. And what else could be at play? Even if we manage to shut down this mechanism or assume that specific mechanism is not there. What could be other things that would explain this correlation between anemia and Right, there could be a third thing that explains both. For example, your social status, or for example, how well educated you are, or the type of opportunities you have access to, or anything like that would both affect your anemia and your wage. So we don't know. So that's something which is actually relatively easy to organize as a randomized experiment because you can cure anemia by, or you can, pretty much cure anemia, at least temporarily, by giving people iron supplements. So, so that's almost like a medical study you can give some people. So this was done in Indonesia. The WISE stands for Work and Iron Status Evaluation. They worked with several thousand households, and they provided them with either an iron supplement or a placebo in a randomly selected way. So they randomized the household. And once they pick a household as treatment, they gave everyone in the household the iron supplement. It takes a few months for people to absorb the iron and to become iron replete. Once you're not anemic, you have enough iron in your body, you get rid of the rest. So anemia is something which is either you are anemic or you're not. And once you're not, that is once your hemoglobin is above 13 for men, and for women, it's between 11 and 12. That's gram per deciliter. You just stop absorbing it. So what they found when they gave this iron supplement is that there is no effect of comparing the people who got the placebo and people who got the pill if they were not anemic before. There's no impact on them. That's exactly what you would expect, because once you have enough, you have enough. There is nothing more we can tell you. On the other hand, the more anemic you were before, that is the further you were from 12 grams per deciliter of hemoglobin in your blood, the larger the effect in terms of the increase in increase in hemoglobin in your blood. That is, what they found is that the people who got the supplement almost all got to 12, or close to 12. So the further away you were from 12, the bigger the effect. And so once they do that, they can look separately at people who are anemic at baseline and people who weren't. And they found that if you focus on people who were anemic at baseline and people who were self-employed, those people made substantially more money after they received the iron supplement. So they look at the wages 8 months after the iron supplement starts, and then there is another end line a few months later. And they find these people to make more money, so about $40 more for a year, which is not nothing. This is not an enormous amount. This is not a doubling of the wage or anything. The yearly wages of these people may have been around $500 or something like that, so it's maybe a little less than a 10% increase. But this is very cheap. Because if someone wanted to, well, actually the experiment itself was very expensive because they had to go behind people's back and make sure that they actually eat the pill, and they had so many nurses, and they were really controlling that they were following the protocol. So for the experiment himself cost us much more than $40 per person. But what they argue in their paper is that that's not really interesting, because if for someone wanted to do it, they could just buy 45 fish sauce, and that would cost them only $6. Yep.
In the experiment, do they control for the fact that people usually earn higher wages as time passes? So the next year, my wage is probably going to be higher than this year because I'm more experienced. Maybe I can get a better wage. I'm better at catching fish.
Well, that's an excellent point. You certainly would want to control for the fact that as time passes, you earn more money. So how would they be able to do that in the context of this experiment?
Maybe there's a historical, maybe I'd like to figure out like how much people earn like over there in that region, and they can control for that percentage increase. And then they can account like maybe the $40 increase, there's like a $22 that is built into that is perhaps due to the historical average increase.
And so you're saying what they could do to control for any historical trend is try to find out what the historical trend would have been. And in particular, what tells them, what is in their data that tells them what the historical trend would have been. Directly free of charge. Not free of charge because that was in the design, but once you have the experiment. Yeah. The control group, there is a placebo group. So half the sample gets nothing. So what they actually do in the experiment is they compare the wage growth of people who got the program to people who got the placebo. In fact, here they compare the wage growth of the self-employed people who were anemic at baseline in the treatment group and in the control group. And you are exactly right that those wages increase in both cases, but they increase faster in the treatment group. And the $40 is the difference in the growth, so it's already accounting for that. So what they say is that, well, if someone wanted to do it on their own, that wouldn't cost them so much money. That would just cost them $6 per year for a gain of $40. So this is a case where you would think is something that starts looking like an S-shape, which is if you become rich enough for spending an extra $6, you actually get a return which is much higher than $6. So you may have this increasing return that is necessary for a poverty trap to emerge, where the slightly richer people get the 45 fish sauce instead of the regular fish sauce that cost them $6, and they make $40 extra. So you could say, well, there is something, except that, of course, you have to ask. $6 is not all that much. So what is preventing these poor people to pay $6? So that is the first place where, if we compare this 40 to 6, is the first place where we can see a poverty trap, except we'll have to explain why it's there. We'll have to explain why it is that the poor people are less likely to spend the $6 on 45 fish sauce than the rich. That's for adults. So we saw that for calories we don't see such a big return to calorie consumption, but for iron we see it.